and a clear reaffirmation of our city's values and priorities. Again and again, Portlanders have demonstrated undaunted faith and optimism that our city should lead on public safety, compassion for our most vulnerable, equity for our marginalized, and environmental stewardship. Our final budget must reflect these values. I've released my first city budget proposed into a challenging environment defined by national uncertainty and a financial gap widened by expiring one-time funds, slipping regional economic competitiveness, slowing property tax revenue, and the staggering cost of the humanitarian crisis on our streets. And I've explored every avenue to blunt the impact of the coming budget reductions. I've sought out external funding, drawn forward unspent and one-time funds, and established financial partnerships with state and regional governments. While I've been successful in these fundraising efforts, many of the solutions included in my budget will not sustain us in future fiscal years beyond fiscal year 25 and 26. And additional efforts and decision-making will continue after July 1st. It's time for Portland to follow a back to the basics approach on fiscal responsibility and long-term sustainability. Prioritizing a safe, clean, welcoming, and economically vibrant city will place our community on financial, sustainable footing and position us to return to national leadership on the social issues that matter most. Over this last 3 months, when we would enter into my office or whatever conference room we were looking at, I would often frame at the very beginning, our mission for this project is community health and safety. So when we would get to a bottleneck in the road and wondering what direction we should go, we would always go back to that key mission on what can we do to restore public safety, livability, cleanliness, with the goals of welcoming an influx of investment and jobs and families back to our city. In regards to fiscal responsibility and sustainability, the City of Portland owes the public a high-performing, fiscally sound organization. My budget implements a long-term operational redesign to accelerate both effectiveness and fiscal sustainability. We will balance current resource limitations against requirements and best practices to maintain adequate financial reserves and protect the city against future financial risk. We will also work with city leaders to identify additional financial solutions for FY26 and 27 in advance of next year's budget development, including further streamlining and reprioritizing core internal services. The challenges we have today are not going away. And my team and I have committed that once this budget is accepted by our city council and we implement on July 1st, we will begin the hard work for fiscal year 26-27 because some of the metrics and some of the challenges are not going away. So it really requires us to maintain our vigilance today, and I've always said many times, we must start strong to finish strong. We are not going to wait for December 1st or February 1st forecast to determine our work to be done. Historically, regarding operational excellence, historically Portland's government bureaus often competed in lieu of cooperation. Permitting often took too long and accomplished too little. We allowed our first responder arrival times to slip and to have crime spike. I believe our city will benefit from a hybrid model designed to better share resources across the enterprise, and structurally our staff will be empowered to wield far more organizational influence. Citywide, over the next fiscal year, we will work to redesign and streamline our communications, equity, community engagement, financial management, procurement, human resources, and information technology functions. We are setting a reduction target of 20% by the end of fiscal year 25-26, half of which would be realized in this next fiscal year. And we're going to plan on doing this by feathering in the adjustments over the course of the year, focusing on milestones per the quarter and inch stones per the week, making sure that we are on target, on task, and on budget. I hate layoffs, and I noted this at my State of the City. And I've always fought like hell, no matter what organization I've been at, because when you have layoffs, you have culture change, and it is so important to keep that culture intact and the trust that comes with it. We will minimize those layoffs as much as possible and examine reducing external contracts and other spending as we go along. Regarding public and community engagement, I'm grateful for the City Budget Office and the Office of civic life and the programs they put forward over this last 2 months and the listening sessions that we had for the public. This was a first ever and was in each one of the 4 districts. That community engagement wasn't just external, it was internal. From the first day I took office in November, I started meeting with our 12 counselors, lunches, dinners, breakfasts. When I took office on January 1st, I continued that, and every 2 weeks, I met either in groups or individually with each one of the counselors. This budget, as it's being unveiled, is not a surprise to any of them. They spent this weekend with us in our conference room going through the budget. Their DNA is already in this budget. They have a very difficult task. They get 4 weeks to do what we've done in 4 months. We wanted to make sure that we delivered a budget that had their values and their goals already in where possible. Regarding our city workforce, the city of Portland relies on the grit, passion, and know-how of our approximately 8,000 employees, and their resilience made a once-in-a-generation realignment and this city reorganization possible. It's been impressive for me to come in from what I felt was a high-performing organization to see what I was going to gain here or be greeted with, and I've been absolutely impressed with the team that we have from the top to the bottom. And once we finish this budget, I'm going to reposition my time from being in really one building to really spreading it throughout the city at our 20-some-odd bureaus and learning from them specifically, because the best decisions made are never made in a corner office. They're always made on the street, in the bureau, in a truck, talking to staff from top to bottom. Regarding green leadership, I've made my points crystal clear to all of you, to the city, and to our counselors. It is time for us to restore the original promise of the Portland Clean Energy Fund and not tap it for unrelated crisis or using it as a short-term option and opportunity to hike taxes. Our voters remember the promises made with this fund: a cleaner, greener, more equitable, lower carbon Portland. And if we want other peer cities to follow our lead, we must keep the integrity of that program sound. Regarding public safety, our first responders must arrive rested and ready when called, and I've asked to mitigate expensive overtime. I've worked with the chief both in police and fire, and with Mike Myers, our service area public safety leader. We have understanding from top to bottom that overtime is being used to backstop in areas in which we can't keep up. And we're going to address overtime, but we're going to address it from a systemic standpoint, and I have the commitment from the entire city to do so. That said, our first response times, human trafficking, crimes, and theft rates remain at unacceptable levels. I've increased our public safety service area by $19.5 million. For the most part, not one program is taking a cut, and many are increasing. There's a $19.5 million overall increase, and we're investing it in fire, in Portland street response, in community health and assess and treat teams, and law enforcement funding to turn the tide on the issues we face. In the terms of Portland street response, we've increased it by over $1 million and 14 new positions, expanding its hours and its overall reach throughout the course of the day in Portland. Regarding parks, and I would have to say that this was one of the bureaus that we had the most conversations on, both external with the community and internal amongst ourselves. My budget stands behind youth programming and our community centers. Every cent that goes into youth programming and community spaces activates volunteers. One of my key things is I wanted to know where volunteers were activated in the city, and I did my darndest to make sure that those were kept, because in some cases we had hundreds of volunteers that were providing service to the city that I wanted to maintain. And I'm proud to say that every community center, I'm proud to say every community center, every program, and every park is going to remain open. Regarding transportation, the Bureau of Transportation has a long-term revenue sustainability issue due to legacy tax structure. The budget seeks resources to address potential reductions through a mix of revenue sources. We are taking modest increases in parking fees in line with peer cities, reinstating leaf cleanup fees, rideshare fees will be increasing, This will allow us to double our investment in pothole repairs, and we're increasing street cleaning. We're increasing graffiti removal, and we're going to tow more derelict RVs and abandoned cars. The benefits in transportation and the additional funding we were able to find had a twin benefit of not only maintaining our roads, but improving community livability in regards to homelessness and housing. As far as homelessness, every dollar we spend on unsheltered homelessness must restore the quality of life, reduce the burden on our public safety system, and unlock Portland's true economic potential. Given our current fiscal situation, I set forth to relentlessly raise funds from outside sources for my plan to end unsheltered homelessness. In this effort, I was successful in securing critical commitments from county, metro, and state levels. In terms of housing, the fastest method to build housing for every income level is to unleash the pent-up capability of our private sector. Without this comprehensive strategy, pressure will continue to mount on our limited affordable homes, putting them out of reach of those who need them most. The goal is really to increase vacancy to bring down the cost of housing. In so doing, I've partnered with Governor Kotek, and we asked our City Council to waive system development charges for the next 5,000 housing permits for housing of every income level. I will work with our City Council to identify long-term cost-benefit trade-offs and incorporate them into future budget actions if needed. And so we have a expense side ledger issue at the City of Portland. And I think we've seen article after article and discussions in our back office regarding that. We've been in successive cut cycles. On the other side has to be, what are we going to do on the revenue side of that ledger? For 40 years, we grew in Portland. It's something we became reliant on, and we actually started saying no as a city to certain codes and permits and growth because we always knew the investments that somebody would make would always yield $1.05 the next year. Now, an investment made in Portland oftentimes is going to be marginal or perhaps at a loss. We must make Portland the city that we once were, where people sought us out, and we had population growth and job growth, of which both are anemic today. I'm proud to work with the governor on the SDC waiver because that's a way we're going to start working on job creation and housing affordability, two critical components to increase jobs and increase livability and affordability for everybody. And again, it's back to that mission. The goal that we set out was community health and safety, and we feel very confident that we achieved that. There are shortcomings in this budget, as would be expected, with such a significant funding gap that we had to address, and I'm proud that we did it. As my first annual budget as mayor of Portland, I believe we have an opportunity to solidify and expand our gains in public safety, our equity goals, and green leadership, as well as return to proven strategies on unsheltered homelessness. And I'm grateful for the role and responsibility of City Council as they discuss, debate, and ultimately pass our next budget. Together, we will leave a profound impact on the future of our city. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to serve in this crucial and critical democratic process on behalf of Portland. And thank you for being here as well.
All right. Any follow-up questions for the mayor? Mayor, we'll have you answer it here, sorry, so that they can still hear you. Sorry. I can give you a stool if you need to.
Hi, Mayor. Debbie Lawrence, Portland Business Journal. So, in just noting the cuts not only to FTE and permitting, but also increasing fees for permitting as well, that's obviously something that's really important for readership. Permitting has been a huge issue for the business community. Just talk about the decision to bring cuts to there, especially on the tails end, especially in the permitting office as well.
Yeah. So we are going to maintain our permit improvement team because efficiencies and making sure that we're streamlining that process is something we've heard from the city, not only in the 4 months I've been here, but really in those last 20 years that I've been following this. So that's one of the things in the investments we are keeping. But we also have to recognize the reality of what's going on in Portland. Over this last successive years, we've had 5,000 homes we've been building and the permitting team that we've needed. Last year it was 800 permits. This year, we had estimated between 500 and 800 if we do nothing. We have a permitting department that isn't sweating. We have too much staff for the level of business that we had. In this cycle, with the tens of millions of dollars of cuts, we looked at that hard, and it's frustrating, but we had to make hard and systemic cuts to it. There's no easy way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question about PSEP and your thoughts on that tax, mostly because I spent on your screen, you loaded another proposal today, and it's going to maybe meeting on Wednesday, I think, using PSEP as a kind of a loan with a promise of paying back any money borrowed from PSEP, city funding that'll magically appear in the future. I'm curious kind of your thoughts on that. It's in line with what
You bet. Well, first of all, I want to talk about Councillor Green in particular. I sure like him. He's a doctor of economics, and he and I sit in my office and we talk about monetary theory and some of the things I know, and he knows it is always like a Rubik's Cube of a conversation. He's wicked smart. I did talk to him about this when he floated it to me. I don't believe paying for services today using tomorrow's funds is a pragmatic approach at where we're at right now. I have 4 years in my administration to really turn the city around and restore the promise of Portland. I don't want to do any sort of debt financing on future expectations. I want us to use the funds, the revenue we have right now to meet the expenses we have, making sure that when we turn the corner, we have those other funds to really accelerate the growth and the needs of the community.
In your statements, it says that many of the solutions included in your budget will not sustain the city in future years. To the layperson, that might seem like the city's kicking the can a bit with some of these budget issues. Why were there not some more long-term solutions, I guess, from the revenue perspective?
Right, I agree with you. And that's why when I noted the 20% reduction in our enterprise services, it's 10% this year. But we're already setting up for fiscal year 26-27 because we'll fully realize that 20% in the next fiscal year. So you see, we set ourselves on a glide path to already blunt that gap that we're experiencing at the turn of the year. Now that gap, we hope, doesn't come back. We hope that the governor's plan and our focus to reduce SDCs can really supercharge growth and housing construction and jobs to come back and get cranes in the air. But if not, we want to make sure we're getting prepared for the out years. And so we're already on that path. But do we have follow-up through that one-time replacement that we found right now? Not yet. But again, we start the new fundraising, the focus on that next fiscal year on July 1st. We're not going to wait.
Can you speak up? You touched on it a little bit more about the decision to increase the utility fees for water, stormwater. I know a lot of people are going to hear that.
Yeah.
Not going to be happy.
Blair, my wife is not happy. I'll tell you that right now. You know, I'm really proud of the safety system that we have with our water, and we're going to have with our filtration, and certainly with our sewer system, you know. But those big expenses took really large capital items, the big pipe and now the water filtration plant. That's 100-year projects that we're putting in place right now. It's certainly something I agree with the public. It's expensive. I did and looked at a comparison with our fees versus peer cities, and we're right in the middle. That surprised me. I was happy to see that, but that's not any solace for somebody who has to pay that bill. You know, we want it to be lower cost. We want better water delivered faster, cleaner. We are delivering great water that's safe, and that's our goal, but it is frustrating. I've seen those increases personally, as well as I've heard from our citizens as well.
Mayor, it's the city council that's going to make the ultimate decision as to where the cuts, where the money's going to go. Is there one day in particular that you have told them this is not negotiable?
Well, unfortunately, I don't get that luxury, Lisa. I can make a suggestion, which is what I did. I can tell you one area in which they wanted to continue to fund, and I explained to them clearly that it was against my North Star, and that was the Sunderland RV Site. So we have an RV site that's a SRV, a Safe Rest Village. And anytime you have somebody living in an RV that's covered in mold, or there are certain illnesses that come from it, that's unsheltered homelessness. And I was very clear, I will not support anything that deals with unsanctioned camping, grabbing 100 people and putting them inside of a fence and having them live in tents, and you're aggregating misery. The same thing goes for RVs. That is unsheltered homelessness. And to sustain that is something I'm not for. And so I explained to them I did not fund the $2.5 million to carry it beyond the September 1st deadline. That if they chose to do it, that was something that they wanted to do amongst themselves, but it wasn't something I was supporting. But that was the one item that I saw many of them were supportive of, or perhaps ambivalent, but I wanted to make them understand that my goals as your mayor is we will not foster unsheltered homelessness in any way, shape, or form.
With the fees themselves, we've done multiple stories about trying to revitalize downtown, encourage folks to come to this area. Isn't increasing parking fees by 25% going against that encouragement to come down here, but also pay more to
Yeah.
shop by?
I looked at that as well, and our team was able to give us some comps on other cities. In Seattle, they're at $5 per hour. And in Portland, we were at, and forgive me, you'll have to check this, don't hold me to this, it was like $2.40. I asked for a $1 increase, and the council agreed 60 cents. So that would just let you know my intention on that. But the good news is that for the first quarter of this year, we've seen downtown traffic increase 7.5%. In March alone, it was 9%. We're seeing that turning of the tide, but we have to find revenue somewhere. And I didn't want to go into this exercise in simply a cut mentality. So the first thing we did in January was we gathered our team and said, okay, what's the revenue side of the ledger? What do we have at our access? And we started looking at all those pass fees that were reduced or removed, parks fees that were reduced or removed, and we started looking, what can we do to increase them? I'm going to flip it on you now. In terms of parks, if a kiddo shows up and is low income and can't afford to swim that day, they can notify us that they can't, and with the low income exclusion still applies. So yes, we took the 10% increase in parks, but we still made it means-based. Low income can still use and utilize these for free if necessary.
All right, let's go. We need two more, so let's get a player and right.
I may have missed it, but are you going to continue to fund the impact reduction program specifically camp removals?
Yes, yeah.
And how much?
I believe, and you'll have to check these, but based on what I know, it was between $16 and $17 million, but it's not an increase. Yeah.
Shay, you did a question. You did an answer. You mentioned the filtration plant. Do you have any concern with the cost of that plant? And
Absolutely.
now construction's paused.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, one of the first things I did was did a DMAIC on that, define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. I wanted to know what the arc of the history was. So I brought in Amanda Fritz, some of our previous commissioners, and I really wanted to understand the 20-year arc of that whole decision. Decided what was going on, decided what the best course of action was based on the cost of a filtration or UV. The filtration plant is still the best solution for us. However, it's unpermitted. It's a safety issue that controls the entire million people in this area. So we put a pause on it because we need to get that permitted now. And so we're going to do it right now. And then once that permit, which hopefully we receive in the next 60 days, we gain it, then it's all stops are off. We're going hard. We're going to try and hit that EPA 2027 requirement.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Really appreciate it. If you have any follow-ups, reach out to me at press or Allison. You can raise your hand over there. Allison Perkins is our PIO for the budget office.